There's always one more war in the Middle East that is going to suck in the United States. This time it is Syria with its chemical weapons. Navy ships are off the coast ready to go with cruise missiles, and it looks like the U.S. and the Brits are going after them. Terry.
Well, UN inspectors have been shot at in Syria as they've been looking into the reports that the government launched the brutal attack against its own people. Ephraim Graham has the story.
It's been 5 days since the suspected chemical weapons attack on rebels in Syria. Sunday, the Assad regime announced it would allow a UN team to look for evidence of an attack. But U.S. officials say their cooperation is, quote, too late to be credible.
The fact is that much of the evidence could have been destroyed by that artillery bombardment. Other evidence could have become degraded over the last few days, and other evidence could have been tampered with.
The hardening of the U.S. position comes as calls for military action grow. France, Britain, Israel, and some members of Congress are pushing for the U.S. to get involved.
This demonstrates yet again that we simply cannot allow the world's most dangerous regimes to acquire the world's most dangerous weapons. In the end, the extremists use these weapons.
You could destroy his munitions and you could destroy his fuel. You could even destroy the Syrian Air Force if we wanted to.
The world is a better place when the United States takes leadership. This is time for us to do this. I hope we will do it soon.
President Obama is still weighing his options, but in a sign the U.S. may be a step closer to an armed response, naval forces have been dispatched towards Syria's coastal waters. Meanwhile, countries like Russia remain skeptical that Syria was behind any chemical weapons attack. And Syrian President Bashar al-Assad continues to deny he did it. He warned any U.S. intervention would create a ball of fire that will inflame the Middle East and result in failure. Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
They always threaten. Do you remember the mother of all battles, Saddam Hussein? They've always got that exalted rhetoric. Oh, the problem is, who do we get if we take down Assad? That's the problem. But it looks like the Saudis are very strongly against him. And from what reports I was reading today, they have launched Prince Bandar bin Sultan to see if he can't do some work behind the scenes in getting people to turn against the Syrians. The Saudis obviously want Assad out. Well, the National Security Agency has been found spying, some of the people spying on the love life of ex-spouses and so forth. Now, they may actually, as a unit, be spying on the United Nations. Lee Webb has that story.
That's right, Pat. The NSA bugged the United Nations headquarters in New York. According to a report by the German magazine Der Spiegel, the NSA was able to get into the UN's video conference system last summer. The magazine got its information from Edward Snowden, who has leaked other information about NSA surveillance programs. The revelations, of course, have led to tensions now between the U.S. and its allies as they have learned that the NSA has been spying on them. Well, the Farmer's Almanac is predicting a bitterly cold winter this year. The 197-year-old publication is using words like piercing to describe just how cold it will be. It's also predicting the Super Bowl could turn into a storm bowl. The game will be played at Giant Stadium in New Jersey. That's outside, by the way, and the Almanac is predicting a blizzard in the Northeast around that time. The Almanac says its predictions are based on planetary positions, sunspots, and lunar cycles. An Ohio man came back to life after being dead for 45 minutes. Tony Yaley's story astounded the medical community and made headlines around the world. Charlene Israel traveled to Ohio and discovered that it was Yaley's faith that kept him alive.
37-year-old Tony Yaley is thankful he could attend church with his family.
Feels great. I was always a believer, but I mean, it's a whole new level now.
In the early morning of August 5th, Tony had difficulty breathing and went into cardiac arrest.
It was 4 a.m. The Lord woke me up. There's no other explanation. I don't get up at 4 a.m. Something just woke me up, and I heard his breathing. And as a nurse, I knew it was not correct. I turned on the light, tried to wake him up. he wouldn't wake up. I took his pulse. He didn't have a pulse, so then I just went into my training and did CPR.
Tony was rushed to the ER at this hospital where he later coded. Doctors worked on him for 45 minutes to save his life. He was later pronounced dead. His family was shocked and heartbroken.
Like it just dropped and like my stomach dropped. I just didn't know how to feel. I just cried.
It was overwhelming shock, a lot of grief.
While nurses prepared the body for his family's final viewing, Melissa kept believing for the impossible.
My 17-year-old cousin, who is a preacher, laid his hand upon me, and the Lord spoke through him, and he called me his child. He said a whole lot more, which I don't remember, but he also said, if we would just believe that it would be done. And from that moment on, I knew he was going to be all right.
Pastor Paul Santoro and his wife Jennifer were at the hospital with Tony's family. Pastor Paul says he had recently been teaching on the power of prayer. The couple had also begun talking to Tony's 17-year-old son Lawrence about the things of God.
I distinctly remember watching him with his elbows on a desk. And he had his head down and he was praying. And then the word came in and the doctors came in and the place erupted with such grief. I'll never forget the sounds of the wailing, the screaming, the crying. And Lawrence jumped up and he went to the wall and he just hit the wall, just really hard. And I saw Lawrence as he was turned to the wall, shaking his head. Then all of a sudden, he straightened up and it was as if he just had this second wind.
Refusing to accept his father's death, Lawrence did something extraordinary.
Something just clicked, and I just came out and I said, "Dad, you're not going to die today."
I spoke against the spirit of death in my prayer, and I asked the Lord to give him life and to call him back. And when I did that, Lawrence runs out into the hallway, and we were actually in agreement. He declared that the doctors must not give up hope on his dad. He said that a couple of times, and then he said that his dad, he spoke toward his dad and pointed toward his dad, and he said his dad would live.
Immediately, Tony's body began to show signs of life. He fully awakened 5 days later with no signs of heart damage or defects.
I mean, there's so many little things that need to get out there, miracles that happened after that big one that everybody's clinging to, you know. I mean, even down to, me coming out with no broken ribs, not being sore.
Hospital officials have no medical explanation for Tony's miraculous recovery. They agree there was divine intervention.
I truly think, though, that with the power of all that prayer and all the things that were being done for him is the perfect coalescence of God in our lives and the gifts that he gives us that we should be sharing.
News of his resurrection has spread around the world.
I just think that we are created by an amazing God, that there's only one answer, God.
People who doubt are going to say it's just medical. People who believe say that's just proof of what I already know to be true.
Tony says he doesn't remember anything about death, no white light, visions of heaven, and no answers why this happened. But he says his faith is stronger and more real than ever.
God steps in when man can do no more. And they had literally came to the end and said, we can do no more. They pronounced me dead, and that's when he came.
The family also want people to worship God, not the miracle.
Our God is an awesome God.
Charlene Israel, CBN News, Dayton, Ohio.
Quite a story, Pat.
It's amazing, Lee. It's amazing. God is the God of life. Jesus Christ said he is the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob. He's not the God of the dead, but of the living. And we all live before him, but it just shows that there's a continuum between life and death. And that man was flat out dead. The thing about it is he's got no brain damage, he's got no physical problems, and apparently with all the work being done from CPA, no broken ribs. It's just the CPR, I mean, it's just amazing, isn't it, Terry?
Astonishing story.
Oh,
I worked
wow.
45 minutes.
But a lot of faith, and a son who believed, and a pastor and his wife who believed, and a family that believed. I mean, fabulous. God does miracles, ladies and gentlemen, and it's not the first century where he did miracles. He does miracles all the time. He lives. He lives. He lives within my heart.
Events will continue this week, marking the 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King's famous I Have a Dream speech. Tens of thousands gathered on the National Mall this past weekend to hear speeches with a strong theme of unfinished business. Democratic Congressman John Lewis from Georgia, the only surviving speaker from the 1963 march, rallied against a recent Supreme Court decision against the Voting Rights Act. Speakers also mentioned high unemployment among blacks, which is twice that of white Americans. CBN's livelihood projects are bringing jobs to northern Thailand. Teams recently set up a bakery in one community. 7 families part of that project, and each person is paid a salary based on the time and labor they contribute. Many of the families work as farmers, so the additional income is a blessing. The bakery serves more than 300 people, and its goods are sold to the local school, grocery store, and flea market. This CBN Livelihood Project is in partnership with a local church in Thailand. The leader of the bakery is a Christian professional baker who wants to bring people to Christ. And you can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.